So on the topic of hydroelectricity, this is the Doozy River. We're in the Bishopstow area near Pietermaritzburg, just outside Pietermaritzburg. And here, down there, that grid there, you can see there is water flowing through there. That is an intake for a hydroelectric generator, which used to generate electricity for the whole area. But currently it's just one farm that uses power generated by water going through a pipeline which goes under the road that I'm standing on. The river does a huge big loop around, and then you can see there's a big downward slope down there, and I'm not sure that you can hear it, but I'll go to where you can hear it just now. So here the water's run underneath the road, and there's an intake for a pipe, and the pipe then runs down the hill. There's somebody been dumping rubbish here, unfortunately, but the pipe then runs down the hill, and then there's a turbine down at the bottom. And then that pipeline, I've just walked a little bit up the road, and that pipeline runs down there. So the river does a huge big loop around of about 4 or 5 kilometers. The pipe is about 200 or 300 meters long, but you can see how much further down it is. You can't see the river down there because it's a bit too bushy, but you can hear that there is a turbine running, that hum that you can hear. I'll just keep quiet and you can hear that there's a rotation noise, and that is the turbine running, and it's the water is using its gravitational potential, and then the pipeline runs down the hill, so that gives the water speed as it runs down the hill. Then there's a turbine in the pipe at the bottom. The water rushing down the pipe turns the turbine. That creates movement or kinetic energy, and then the kinetic energy is then used to generate electrical potential energy using a generator with loops of copper wire rotating in a magnetic field, and it makes the current flow in the wires, like how I showed you with an electric generator. So I'm just a little further up the road now. Now you can actually see the river clearly through the bushes, and you can see how far down it is to the river. So that's how much, and the loop that the river does around, it's a big peninsula. The river really does lose quite a lot of altitude, and that's why the setup works well for that hydroelectric power station, because the pipe can be a relatively short distance and cut across and run downhill. So now I'm down at the turbine, and you can see the water that's running down the pipe being forced through the turbine, and you can see the water just splashing out the bottom once the kinetic energy has been used to turn the wheel, and then the water returns to the river on the downstream side of the loop of the river. So that's the water that has expended that energy and has made the turbine rotate. And that turbine is attached to a rotating shaft there that rotates on bearings, which then rotates that belt. The large wheel of the belt rotating the small wheel just gives it a little bit more torque, so a little bit more power to create rotation. And the generator's inside that blue box there, where you've got rotating loops of copper wire with armatures in the presence of a magnetic field. Here you can just see some of the bearings that are used. These are old worn out ones. There you can see where I'm pointing now. There are little metal lubricated balls that are missing, so these bearings are worn out, and those bearings would fit in there. And here you can see on the gauge it's generating more than 500 volts, which then would obviously have to be put through a converter transformer to convert it to normal 240 volts. This is the DB board. You can see by the colors of the wire that there is an earth wire there which runs to the ground. You can actually see the green and yellow wire there running down to the ground. And then I was just pointing to the cable there that runs out and delivers the power to the farm. And here you can see an adjacent box that shows that they are producing alternating current. And just here, running right next to the road, is the big fat electrical cable that then takes the electricity from the generator to the farm. So that's an example of a hydroelectric little power station that is producing enough electricity to run a farm. As I said, it used to supply enough power for the whole district of Bishopstow, and it's about 150 years old. So that's how old that
generator and turbine down there is